They need to be masked.
You both need to wear masks. Okay.
And then
Thank you.
and then they're straight out.
Yeah.
Great.
About fully disabled. Yeah, I can't check.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Get it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are they done? Hey, Jeff, I just want to test audio. Can you hear me?
I can, Rod. Did you get my email to Brian and Jeff?
Audio. Thank you. Can you hear me now? No, I can't.
I can hear you, Arlene. Rod's on mute.
Thank you very much, because when I couldn't unmute myself, I'm so proficient on this computer. Instead, I closed myself out and had to start all over again.
I think I might have
What I was,
reset my 6 different mute buttons. I think you can hear me now. At least I hope you can.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all right. It's just,
are you in Tracy Hall?
yes, and I forgot, but it's the night of the donkey thing at the pageant. So there's a lot more livestock here than there is normally.
Always a good thing. I've never heard.
I think the upping the IQ quotient here pretty significantly right now.
You stole my next line, Rod.
Good, Rod. We could hear every other word. It's called fill in the blanks. While I was waiting to get in, there's a new crest on the piece of whatever that tells you the host will let you in soon. And so I forgot that Norwich was chartered in 1761. So now I have another date in my head.
What's the year that we got the internet? It seems that old.
Okay. Well, so we actually should have a full complement of all 7 members tonight. And I think that's the first time in a long time. Matt, you're still muted. So if you talk, we don't have to get that in.
I do it, Arlene. I do it, everyone.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we need Patrick and Sue Pittiger.
We need
Patrick
Richard,
Bradley is here.
yeah, we need Richard and Sue Pittiger.
So we'll wait. We'll wait till 7. Then if they're late, we have it's 7:01. We have a quorum. Who is, Dennis Kaufman. And who is AmComs? Oh,
Is that Sue Pittiger?
yeah, what is she doing with that AmCom?
I have no idea. I'm going to rename her.
Well,
Sorry about the AmCon. That's my name now.
we'll just call you Amy. For
Oh,
sure.
okay. Okay,
And we are still waiting.
I can't get this to sit right. Wait a minute. No.
Okay, Linda, Cook,
That's-
what would a meeting be without Linda Cook? There's Richard. So we're still, oh, now we're here. Okay. Who is that muttering?
I believe it's the MC for the donkey things, for the pageant. So that you're hearing in the background.
I'm going to call the meeting to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, I'm going to call the meeting to order now. And can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I so moved.
And the pageant seconds it. Okay.
Did we have a seconder?
Yes, here.
Okay.
Right. Okay. And you all have a copy of the minutes,
Yes,
and I assume you've read them.
yes.
Can I have a motion first to approve the minutes?
So moved to approve the minutes.
And do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Anybody have any amendments, corrections? If not, Rod, do we need to take an oral vote, or would it be sufficient for people to raise their hands?
I would actually prefer an oral if we're going to be really fussy about this. Yeah.
Well, may as well do it correctly if it's not hard. Okay, I'll just call on you in the way that I see your pictures on my screen. Don,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Patrick,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Sue,
Approved.
Richard. Are you muted?
Richard,
Richard,
I was muted. Aye.
okay, I approve. It is unanimous. Are there any? I lost a piece of paper, but I guess I don't really need it. Are there any public comments, announcements, or correspondence? Dennis? You're muted.
I'm not muted any longer. I'm Dennis Kaufman. I live at 535 Campbell Flat Road, and I have lived here for 50 years. I would like to address the application by the Cantors. If now is not the appropriate time, I would like to then talk to the board at the appropriate time.
It's not the appropriate time.
Will you then recognize me when it is?
Okay, so you're here for the public hearing.
Yes.
Okay, well, we're not up to that yet.
But welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any comments or announcements? If not, the first item on the agenda is, oh, I'm looking at the wrong agenda. That's very good. I'm looking at the minutes. Just give me a minute. I had the agenda in my hand and somebody stole it from me. Minutes. That's the first item. That's not it. That's not it. Found it. Okay. The first item that we're going to deal with before the public hearing is a boundary line adjustment. And Rod, would you like, is anybody here to talk about the boundary line adjustment?
No.
No. So Rod, would you just explain it?
Sure, I'll try. So for those of you who've been on the board for a while, you may recognize this boundary line adjustment application. Back, I believe, at the onset of COVID, the applicants made this application an identical application to now. And then due to family circumstances and the impact of COVID, withdrew or did not, once they received approval, that is the board approved my work as a zoning administrator, finding that it conformed to the criteria for subdivision regulation section 2.1D. And then in the time after that, due to family circumstances and COVID, the applicants did not proceed with recording the new plat in the land records. And then in the time that's elapsed, they've reconsidered their position and would like to proceed with it. The one minor difference between now and the original application is that I believe that there's an additional piece of information with regard to the ownership of the original parcel reflected in a letter dated November the 11th, 2021, signed by Kathleen Spruik, and making it clear that she is aware of and acknowledges the submission of this application for the purposes of a 60-acre boundary line adjustment to tax map 633. So the record is complete. The numbers work. The boundary line adjustment conforms to the requirements of Norwich subdivision regulation section 2.1D, in that it's a area of land to be transferred, except for one important exception, I should say, which is that the area of the land to be transferred is not less than half of the area of the original parcel. In fact, it exceeds that, but not by much, I guess. So the existing parcel is 170 acres. The transfer is 60 acres. The remaining parcel would be 110. The existing smaller parcel is 4 acres. The proposal is to add 60 acres, so it would end up being 64 acres. So I believe that after reviewing the application and the guidance in section 2.1D, the boundary line adjustment meets those requirements, and I'm asking that the board approves it.
Anybody have any comments or questions?
No.
Need to vote on this, Rod?
Yes, we do. Just a quick run around would be great. Thank you.
Okay. You need a motion?
Yes, let me suggest a motion that the board approves the work of this zoning administrator with regard to application 59 BLA 21.
Okay. Don,
I so move.
Linda,
Well,
Oh,
are we,
we need to move it and second it, I guess. Arlene, sorry,
I'll
you need a seconder. So is it Matt's going to second it? Is that right? Thanks, Matt. Now you can get the vote.
okay, well, Don voted already, so I will vote. Linda,
Aye.
Patrick,
vote to approve.
Matt,
approve.
Sue,
Approve.
Richard.
Approve.
Okay, if you could, and so that's unanimous. If you could all stay exactly where you are, instead of the TV, the computer keeps changing your positions. Otherwise, I would just tell you to memorize the order that you're in if we vote. Okay, so I'd like to open the public hearing. And that is Campbell's Flat LLC request for flood hazard conditional use approval to construct a dwelling and bond with associated development at 636 Campbell's Flat Road, tax map parcel number 06026.000. And I didn't do a roll call. Okay, would everybody on the board please identify themselves? I'm Arlene Rotman.
John McCabe.
I'm Matt Stewart.
Linda,
I'm Linda Gray.
Richard,
Richard Stucker.
Sue?
I'm Sue Pittiger.
Who did I leave out? Oh,
Patrick Bradley.
Okay. So this is a full component. We have 7 members, and it, as always, takes a quorum only to approve or disapprove of the application. So first, let me ask, does anyone on the board have a conflict of interest?
No.
Hearing nobody, I will assume that they don't. And as you recognize, this is the same application, different application, but the same idea, the same basic application as we heard. And they're back now with a more complete application. Okay. Does anybody who's presenting the matter believe any member of the board has a conflict of interest? So let me first identify who is here on behalf of the applicant. And can you identify yourselves on behalf of or opposed to the applicant? Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff Goodrich, Pathways Consulting, assisting Jonathan and Ruth.
Okay, Jonathan?
Yeah, Jonathan Cantor, the owner.
Okay, and Dennis?
Dennis Kaufman and Sue Kaufman, we are abutters to the Cantors.
Okay, and who else is here? Yes, who are
Hi,
you?
Ruth Cantor.
Okay,
Hold on.
and yes,
Keith Moscow, architect, worked with the Cantors many times, former Norwich resident, although my architecture practice for the last 30 years has been in Boston.
oh, okay. So now I would like to swear in all the parties that are here to make any presentation. So if you would raise your right hands, everybody but the board. And do you hereby affirm that the evidence you give in the matter in hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the penalties of perjury? And I'd like to hear a verbal.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
I do.
Yes,
Okay.
I do.
Yes, I do.
And who will be presenting the applicant's case?
I will be doing most of the presentation.
And I would like to add some words after Jonathan is done.
Okay,
And we have Jeff here too this time. Last time, you may recall, he had a Zoom issue and couldn't connect. But Jeff will be a part of it as well.
okay. Ruth, are you going to be talking?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so what I would like, the applicants have submitted, what is it, how many, was it 6? Yep, that have okay, help me out. 5. The applicants have submitted 5 documents as exhibits. Would somebody like to make a motion to put those exhibits into evidence? Somebody on the board.
Yes, so moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so that you know, all of the exhibits that have been given to us will now be in evidence and part of the record. And the zoning administrator has submitted 2 exhibits. And would somebody please make a motion to enter those into evidence?
Your turn, Matt.
I move to enter them into evidence.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Okay, and I'm going to just assume if everybody raises their hands on the motion to, I don't think we voted on this, sorry, the motion to put the applicant's exhibits into evidence, I'll do it backwards. Does anybody object? Hearing no objections, Rod, we have unanimous approval. And we also have a motion to put the 2 zoning administrators' exhibits into evidence. Does anybody object? Hearing no objections, that is also unanimous, so everything is in evidence now. So I need to say this for the sake of the applicants, actually. I'm sure you've all read that which has been submitted. So we should all understand that all of those narratives and all of those drawings are actually in evidence now. So you can keep your oral presentations brief because we have all those documents. Who is the first person to make a presentation on behalf of the applicant?
I'll do that.
Let me just ask you, Dennis, are you here in support or opposition or question?
I'm here in support.
Oh, okay. Well, let me start with the people who actually have submitted the applications, because that's the evidence we have to hear first. So who wants to go first?
So I can go first. Let me just ask a question to start off with. I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with the site and whether you might want a quick walkthrough of what it looks like presently. And then we can go in a quick review of what we're proposing to do. And then I thought we might specifically address the comments that came out of our previous hearing to make sure those are answered. And you know, if there are any further questions, of course, we can answer those.
Okay, yeah, the procedure goes like this. You make your presentation, and then everybody on the board, if they want to, has an opportunity to question you. And since there's nobody here in opposition, we don't need to give the public an opportunity to ask questions. And then the second, if other people need to testify, it would be the same procedure. First, you make your presentation, and then the board will have the opportunity to ask questions if they have any. Fair enough?
Yep. So would you like me to share my screen and just give a quick review of the site?
Sure.
Or I mean, I don't want to present more than you would like to see. So
Yeah, I respect what some of us were not present for the last hearing, Arlene. So I respect what Jonathan's trying to do here. Would it be possible for Rod to just give a quick statement of the objective facts and not any argument with respect to areas that were not approved last time, so that Jonathan doesn't have to feel as though he has to make the whole pitch?
I think if you at Rod's exhibits, one of them is a letter that was sent, I'm not sure who it was sent to, which set out what was required and what they did not present. So I don't think we need to go over that again. And essentially, this is a new application. So other than putting the old putting the old decision into evidence and the questions that were raised just sort of brings us up to date. So this is a new, but this is a brand new procedure.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I was thinking about it incorrectly.
Okay, so
Arlene, and before we move on to that, I see that we have one more person joined us, and it might be useful to know whether that person is here for this hearing, I presume so, and whether that person is in support or not.
no, I don't know how to identify her because I think that's not a video. I think that's a picture.
So Arlene, the person's name is Avery Reimer. I believe that's how you pronounce the name. And so you could call on her to identify herself.
Hello. Yes, I'm Avery Reimer. I'm happy to include my video. I got an email I got a letter in the mail letting me know that there was a project that was being proposed near our property, I guess on Campbell Flats Road. So I decided to attend this Zoom meeting. I know absolutely nothing about the project being proposed, but I'm here.
Are you in a butter?
Pardon me? I assume so because, yes, because that's what the letter tells me. I am in a butter.
Okay, well.
It's complicated. I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Property I own, but we've rented it out. So I'm behind on what this is about.
If you choose later to participate, I'll swear you in. Otherwise, just listen. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
So it seems like there's enough new faces that it makes sense for me to just do a sort of a quick run through of the property so people know what we're talking about. And then we'll make sure we address the issues that have been raised previously, because obviously those were what prevented us from succeeding with a permit last time. At least that's my understanding. So if I could share the screen.
If you can, you may.
Okay.
You should have access, Jonathan.
Okay, let me see if I can do that. Let's try this.
There you go.
Okay, so you can see my screen now. So let me just go back. This is, we're actually looking at the packet that you all have. And this happens to be Exhibit 5. I'm going to start with some photos of the actual site so everyone can see exactly what we're talking about. Currently, this is a view looking north going across the property. On the left is the house, this little white structure here. And in sort of the center of the frame is the barn and garage. We're proposing to put our structures, which are going to be new, in the similar positions, except that the barn or garage will be where the house is, and the house will be where the barn and garage is presently. This house has a basement. It's mostly outside of the FEMA jurisdictional area. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And this barn is built right on grade and is mostly in the FEMA floodplain area. So I'll just quickly go through the photos so you guys, if I can manage to do that. How do I make it advance? 1 second. My pictures were blocking the arrow. So this is looking out towards the street, Campbell Flats Road. That's a western view. And then this is looking north again, but standing past the building. So you're looking out at the farm and the fields there. And this is looking from the road toward, beyond the barn a little bit. You can see the barn. These buildings are not in good shape at all. They're, significantly rotted out. They leak. The house here's our car, and on the right is the house. They use a lot of propane. It's a small house, but it leaks like a sieve, both water and energy, and the mice enjoy it. And so that's the property. In the back here, in the background is an intermittent stream, and our property extends up to about it. It's generally flat, although it inclines slightly to the left in this photo. The leaching field is like in the front of this car, just beyond the house. It's substandard. I think it's more of a leaching pit, if I recall. And certainly Jeff Goodrich can talk more about that. But it doesn't meet present codes at all. Nothing about the house meets code. And so it's not a big loss to see it come down. And it's certainly not energy efficient or helping the environment. And of course, the barn and garage are mostly in the floodplain. So now I'm going to go back to, actually, I'm going to bring up a slide that is not exactly in your photo. It's in Keith Moscow's drawing, but I wanted you just to see that Jeff Goodrich and Pathways Consulting did do the site plan, and here's their letterhead and stuff. And you have this on file as part of our previous hearing. I apologize, I didn't include it in the packet, but it's represented in Moscow Architects drawings as well. So here's the DRB packet. And one of the things that this board had asked for after our previous hearing was to show the relationship of what we are proposing to what's existing. And we'll come back to this in a minute. I'm going to let Jeff describe that in more detail. This is what we're proposing. This amoeba shape here. Can everyone see the screen okay?
Yep.
Yeah. This amoeba shape here is like an island, which is outside the jurisdictional area, the FEMA jurisdictional area. So we're not really concerned with the type of construction here, though of course we're going to be smart about it, and we're going to make sure it's quite resilient. But you can see the barn is within that border. The patio and decking, most of the decking is in this area. The pool is in this area, and most of the leaching field, this is a proper engineered leaching field, is within it was outside the FEMA boundary. The house, which is over in this area, you can see part of it is also in that island, and part of it is over the floodway. And I apologize if I use some of these terms incorrectly. Jeff will be able to correct me when he talks about it some more. But we're proposing that this new building be raised above the floodplain, a minimum of 1 foot, which is the requirement. And John Broker Campbell wrote about this as well. We've heavily notated these drawings. For example, we've noted where we might put HVAC equipment, again, outside of the floodplain area, so that there's no harm coming to them. Additionally, we'll be smart about it. These will be super efficient buildings, so they'll only need small heat pumps to operate. And those heat pumps will be probably about 4 feet off the ground on the exterior, so that they don't get covered with snow. They may even have a little roof over them or something just to protect them. But these are possible locations that I've identified. What else? I think that's all I'll mention about this drawing. But that gives you a flavor for what we're doing. There's an intermittent stream back here, as I mentioned in the photos. We are planning to put a tennis court in. That, of course, will be at grade, so it's not, it's in the floodway, but it's not impairing the floodway. And we will also make that out of materials that won't get destroyed by floods, because we know it's going to flood. So we don't want to do things twice here. Let me go on to the next. This is just what was this plan? This was just the site plan without all the contours and stuff. So here's what the house sort of looks like. This is looking at it from the north, windows facing out to the field. It's basically a 1.5 story house. It's slightly smaller than what's there presently. It has none of the impact on the floodway that the other, that the old house has. And of course, we're trying to make this net zero, so it will have no environmental impact other than building it. You know, we are conscious that there's embodied carbon involved in here. And we will select our materials wisely to minimize that impact. On these plans, you can see we've identified the FEMA base elevation, and we've got the first floor a foot above it. I mean, the underside of the first floor 1 foot above it. So the actual floor itself is probably a little over 2 feet above the base flood elevation. Let me go to the next plan. We included some additional comments on this plan. For example, we've made sure to identify that all these panels that are hiding the support system and the structural system of this house, which are piers, those panels are meant to blow off or break away in the event of a flood. So they're not permanent structures. They're designed to break off if need be, and they'd also be, you know, like lattice where water could go through them, so that hopefully they won't even break off.
Sorry, can I just ask a question? Or are these relevant to criteria that we're going to need to opine about, Rod or Arlene, or perhaps, you know, I'm not taking notes. This is a lot of detail. So
we have those exhibits in.
Yeah, I think we can. Yeah.
And I was going to let him finish and then remind everybody that goes after him that
okay.
all of the documentation is in evidence already.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just pointing these out because these were specific comments that arose in the prior hearing. And
Right.
While I trust every member of the board to read all of the documents thoroughly, I know for me, sometimes having someone just sort of underline them is helpful when it comes time to review.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you. I don't mean any disrespect. I was curious if this was the level of granularity that you received feedback on.
Yeah, the reason why these comments are in here is in direct response to issues that arose prior.
Thank you.
And again, we've got in our notes here that we intend to meet all of the various requirements. I won't go into detail on them, but we again are trying to address all the requirements of meeting that particular section of the floodplain regulations.
I'm going to interrupt you now.
Yeah.
To say, if you could move a little faster, I find this very helpful, simply because it's a lot to absorb. All of the other documents actually, if I remember correctly, speak directly to the questions that had to be answered from our denial the first time round. Okay, so you could finish up.
Yeah. So that's really all there is in terms of you know what I want to show you. Of course, I'm happy to go through the previous concerns point by point, and I've submitted those in writing. So I'm happy not to if people feel that way, but I just wanted to make sure that this is the opportunity to answer everything, so I don't get a surprise in the mail that says you've been denied and I haven't had a chance to respond to that concern.
Jonathan,
Or if you feel something that's missing.
Jonathan,
Yes,
after the presentation, people will have an opportunity if they need to answer questions. So all of these documents are in evidence, and they are in direct response to the letter that was sent to you, I believe, telling you all the things that we needed to have done in order for you to be in a position, for us to be in a position to consider your application as complete. So I think we could move on.
okay. So why don't I turn over our presentation to briefly to Jeff and let him pine in on anything that he thinks I may have missed or would be helpful for you guys to know. He's the fellow, Jeff is the one that had the most direct communications with John Campbell.
To show up last time, I remember that.
Yeah.
But I also remember the last time there was a hearing, and I said the same thing about all the documents are already in evidence, so you can be brief. And Jeff complied, and he was very brief, and I appreciated that. So thank you. So you can not share your screen anymore.
Yeah.
So that we can see you. And
yeah, there you go.
Any members of the board have any questions for Jonathan? If not, yes, Don.
And this is regarding the presentation that we just heard, correct?
Yes.
All right. I see the house is being built on piers in compliance with FEMA regulations. Where is the supports for the barn, and what kind of supports are under the barn?
The barn would be a more traditional foundation. There's no basement, so it would just be a standard frost foundation. Jeff can add to that. Jeff, go ahead.
Jeff has his hand up, so Jeff, briefly answer that.
Yeah, Jonathan, I will always defer to Arlene. So in short, the barn is outside the floodplain. And if I may, some terms, I think the regulations talk about a flood hazard, which John Broker Campbell and I would refer to as a floodplain. Jonathan has mentioned the floodway. We are not impacting the floodway in any manner. So what we've shown on the plan, what Jonathan has shown on drawing A0 is the floodplain or special flood hazard, and the proposed barn/garage is outside of the special flood hazard.
Okay, good. That's all I needed to know.
Okay. Any other?
Yeah, I have a question, but I'm going to hold it until after I hear what else Jeff has to say.
Okay. Anybody else? If not, Jeff. Oh, Matt, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm curious what the breakaway panels are made out of.
We haven't confirmed the material. It's a little early in the process for that. You know, we're going to choose a material that is, you know, flood resistant, and I'm not trying to use a technical term here. So Jeff or Keith may chime in with a specific technical term, but you know, we don't want something that's going to fall apart in the first flood, but we do want something that is going to let water pass through and not be a hindrance.
Anybody else?
I'm just speak. Oh, Jeff, you go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is dealing with projects in a scenario like this, typically what's required is a knockout panel that's about 14 inches wide by 6 inches high. What the Cantors have proposed is something that goes above and beyond to include much more ability for water, to the extent it rises to this level, to flow through without including knockout panels. And to the extent the water does rise and there's any pressure, if you will, the materials are intended to pop off at the end of the day.
And just Keith Moscow, architect, just to add, in the past when we've done this, we have utilized fir. Oh,
Thank you.
Okay, Jeff. It's your brief turn.
Yeah, thank you, Arlene. So I'm glad to go through my November 17 letter, which was a revision to my October 26 letter, which I thought was going to be a function of other stuff that the team Cantor was submitting. So I appreciate Rod fixing the record. Anyway, the goal of my letter was basically to say, okay, here's what we're going to say in response to the DRB's notice of decision. I tried to address every point, and to the extent there's a need for certification, agreed. That's all good. And I'll just quickly sort of skip down through my November 17 letter. Under A, yep, we want to address the DRB's comments under item 1. A2 basically says, although I haven't done it this early, the Cantors have engaged a structural engineer to design the piers. And you'll see Steve Siegel's letter. Under B, I was trying to address each of the items that was in the DRB's letter as a function of John Broker Campbell's comments, and to the extent there are code requirements, yes, we'll either address or conditionally address each of them. And I can go into detail. I'm trying to keep it short. And I think under looking back, my my indents, my paragraphs were wrongly labeled. But anyway, on page 2, item 3, Moscow Lynn's architect under drawing A0, I think is a critical thing, because if you look at item 3 and item 4, A0 shows that the existing barn occupies 1,151 square feet in the floodplain. When we were I was looking at site elevations, actual field shots, I had an average of the site being about 0.5 feet below the flood elevation, the special flood hazard of the floodplain. And so if I look at 1,151 square feet versus down under item 4, it'd be 4B2 versus the piers. So the cylindrical component of the piers will obstruct or impact 23.56 square feet in the floodplain. So basically what the Cantor proposal is to do, we want to take a building that is now in the floodplain, obstructing possible floodwaters, raise it up with piers, and reducing 1,151 square feet of floodplain interference by about a factor of 50 down to 23.56 to accommodate the cylindrical piers. The rest of my letter simply addresses certifications.
okay. Could I add, this is Keith Moscow, architect, could I add just one thing? Sure. Just big picture. Number one, we never have our clients present in meetings. This is different because Jonathan is such a knowledgeable client, because he's not only a client, but he's also a builder. And our very first project as architects we did was with Jonathan Ruth in 1990. So we have a lot of experience working together. Jonathan also is an expert at green design and passive house design. And this is a project together, working together, we can achieve goals that isn't really under the bailiwick of your jurisdiction, but we're going to do the right thing. And
Thank you.
On a very big picture that Jeff just talked about, where our goal is to improve the situation, not make it worse. So that's just high level stuff, open for any other questions.
Anybody have questions? Richard?
Yeah, Rod, I think this question's best headed your way. The DRB is being asked to approve the construction of a house that is 2/3 of which is in the floodplain. And it is significantly below the allowed minimum acreage of 2 acres in the rural residential zone. what is our authority in this regard? I was under the impression that the 2-acre minimum is written in stone. Could we express a willingness to have a variance on that, or is that, or can that not be violated?
Let me break out your question into two parts, Richard. I'll deal with the slightly easier one first, although conceptually it might be a bit more challenging. So the way Norwich's special flood hazard area regulations are written is consistent with the period of time that the last time the regulations were updated in the 2009 timeframe. And in this jurisdiction, with this language as it exists, the question of whether a structure is in the floodplain or not is a question of the elevation of the structure relative to the floodplain, as well as a plan view representation. So when you look at the plans provided by the architects and engineers, you see the footprint of the house occupying a space that's in the floodplain. But when you look at the elevation drawings, particularly with the additional information setting the elevation heights for what constitutes a special flood hazard area, the applicants are able to establish that the bottom of the first inhabited floor of the structure is more than 1 foot above base flood elevation. So technically, the way you would read that is that the proposed structure is not in the floodplain. Although if you were to look at it in plan view form, clearly the footprint of the structure is over the area that is mapped as floodplain. But as a technical matter, its elevation leaves it out. It's effectively, one way of thinking about it is it's cantilevered over the floodplain, not sitting in it. So it doesn't require fill. It's not a basement. It's not a full basement. So it's not adding fill to the floodplain. And so one of the concerns with that the regulations try to address is if you were to build a conventional structure with a foundation and then occupy the floodplain, you would occupy the floodplain with a structure that would better be served by allowing water to sit there in flood conditions. And so both on paper and as a sort of a practical matter, the structure is effectively not in the floodplain. And the applicants have given us information with regard to the cumulative impact of the 30 piers, which in the analysis provided by the state floodplain manager constitutes a negligible increase in fill or material in the floodplain. So that's that question. Is the structure in the floodplain? The answer is effectively no. The second question, the parcel is undersized for the rural residential district. The minimum parcel size in the rural residential district is 2 acres. There are some exceptions that are allowed for in the regulations, but they're actually not pertinent to this application. What you would use as a zoning administrator in this application is the fact that it's a pre-existing non-conforming use, to the extent that it's a single dwelling unit, a house with accessory structures, the garage and barn, and that the total area occupied by the replacement house and garage is no greater than the existing area footprint of what is there now, so-called pre-existing non-conforming structure. So to break it out even further, if somebody was attempting to establish this parcel in the district, if this land was part of a larger parcel and somebody was applying as an applicant to the board to create a parcel that was less than 2 acres, you would have reasons to deny because it doesn't meet the minimum threshold of being 2 acres. But the fact of the matter is we don't know when this parcel was created. My suspicion is that it predates zoning, and it certainly predates me, and which is actually older than the zoning. And so
that it's a pre-existing non-conforming.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a pre-existing non-conforming use, and then the question is, are the applicants exacerbating the pre-existing non-conformity? And the answer is no. The total footprint of the proposed replacement is similar to the footprint of the structure that's currently there.
So then if, let me just follow up briefly, please.
Yep, sure.
So it's allowable because there's an existing structure, non-conforming. If there
Yep.
were no structure there, it would not be allowable, correct?
That's right.
That's correct.
Wow.
Or if they were planning to build something significantly bigger.
Yeah, in this instance, if they were trying to approach this project from a different standpoint and they wanted a house with a footprint of 4,000 square feet and then a 7-car garage, assuming for the sake of the argument that it would fit, but that's a pretty normal new house in Norwich, then they would be denied.
Okay.
Because it would exacerbate the non-conformity.
Are there any other questions?
Thank
I
you,
just wanna
Rob.
add one
That was
thing.
very helpful.
You're welcome.
Right, that was very clear, but the one other component is we're actually removing structures that impede the flow
Right.
Yes.
of the floodplain now.
Right. I would. Yeah. I think Mr. Moscow makes a good point in terms of the overall impact of the application, but in the narrow answer to Richard's question, that's a sort of a separate issue.
You didn't net it out. You said the additive amount of fill is negligible under the law, but the reality is if you were to choose to look at the net effect, it would be taking away 50 times the amount of existing disturbance to the floodplain, right?
Yeah, the conclusion you could
Makes
reach is
sense.
that it's an improvement to the floodplain.
Yeah.
Because there's more withdrawn from it. Yes.
Technical answer to Richard's question, without everything else that's happening that's good, is that it is a pre-existing non-conforming structure and it is simply being placed within the same footprint, and therefore legally it's okay.
Yeah.
Sue.
Linda has a question.
Linda?
Go, Linda.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about, is it under our purview to ask questions about the tennis court? Because that is a new part of the design and it will be in the floodplain. And so you haven't said anything about its impact. Does it have any impact that we should be concerned about? What materials would it be made out of?
Jeff, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I'll defer to Jonathan with respect to the materials, but the idea for the tennis court was not to elevate existing grade. So in the context of the floodplain question, there won't be any impact on the floodplain from the tennis court.
Rod, do you want to add to that?
Just to confirm that Jeff's response is correct, that from a floodplain impact standpoint, the presence of the tennis court, it makes no impact.
Okay, Sue, did you have a question? Sue
It was
Pittigan?
relating to the tennis court. Linda beat me to it. I'm very mystified though, because isn't a tennis court a solid surface of some type? And doesn't that affect the way water moves? Jeff?
Yeah, the tennis court, I mean, to bluntly address Sue, yes, the surface is, I would argue, a solid, but the floodplain question is one of elevation, not the materials at elevation.
So just to elaborate on that, Sue, hopefully this is helpful. In this regard, the rules don't make a judgment or don't require a response to the question of whether the surface is permeable or not. It's just a question of elevation. So a concrete pad with a synthetic surface, which I assume is what the tennis court's going to be made out of.
Clearly, these are Wimbledon grass courts. Come on.
Yeah, well, we could make that a condition. So
I kid.
Yeah, me too. Assuming it's a concrete slab with some AstroTurf glued to it, which I think, without wanting to belittle the effort, because it's actually hard to do. is it's impervious, but it doesn't have any impact on the floodplain because it's the same elevation as the existing grade, and that's in the floodplain, but it's not above the floodplain, so it's not raised. You know, it's not an elevated tennis court, and so therefore there's no impact on the floodplain.
Well, can I just finish? If there's no impact on the floodplain from the tennis court, why is there an impact from the house then in the floodplain?
Because
unless it's if it's elevated. I mean, I'm finding this very confusing. And my understanding, hard surfaces, you want to avoid them. You want water to be able to move through the surfaces.
You want to take this, Jeff?
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff.
I'll give it a whirl, Rod.
Yeah.
And please help me. The floodplain question is one of elevation. So
Yes.
if my fingers represent the floodplain, anything that's above that affects the floodplain. So the tennis court is not changing where my fingers are. The house is only by virtue of the cylindrical piers that will support it. So what the house is doing is eliminating, 1,150 something square feet.
Yes.
For my fingers aren't changing for the tennis court.
Right.
Okay.
I hope that answer helps. So they're both sort of three-dimensional objects. If you imagine the house as a box and the tennis court is a very flat box, the box that is the tennis court is smooshed into the ground, so the top of the box is level with existing grade, so there is no elevation impact. And the box that is the house, here my phone, is suspended above the existing grade, so it doesn't impact the floodplain performance either, because the water can still move through. That's the water under my phone. So yeah, which is actually their house.
Okay, so
yes.
Anybody else have a question? Matt?
Yeah, I'm just turning off my video so you can hear better. So if you took the area of the tennis court or the volume of the tennis court and of the poles and fencing material, doesn't that create a volume within the floodplain, albeit very stretched out compared to, say, a concrete pillar for a house?
All right, I can't.
It does seem like it is three-dimensional development within a floodplain, albeit not that thick. I just feel like I think we should call things for what they are, and that this is development. Whether or not we're going to approve this development or not is one thing. I just feel like it is a form of development in the floodplain that is three-dimensional. So,
Matt, can you hear me? If you ask a question without
not just brushed off as not a building.
Okay, we have rules about questions here. Ask questions, but we don't state our opinions. So I just wanted to remind you of how we ask questions.
Okay. So my question is, why is this not considered within the floodplain if there is material that is in the floodplain, whether it be fencing or the asphalt for the court?
Jeff?
Yeah, in doing a bunch of these projects with John Broker Campbell and his predecessor, Sasha Peeler, and before her, et cetera. The floodplain question is sort of twofold. It's one of elevation, and then it's one of how much water, to the extent flooding occurs, can pass through whatever objects or obstructions may be in the way. The way the FEMA and the state addresses buildings in the floodplain, for instance, is if you have so many of these panels that essentially in a flood flip over to allow flood waters to flow through, and in a house of this size, it might be 6. It's acceptable in terms of addressing flood conditions. In this case, and I'm running on just a bit, what we're proposing is piers, so we have virtually an entire plane or platform through which water can pass. With respect to whatever fence is around the tennis court, there is virtually no obstruction in terms of, if it's a, chain link fence or something like that, water can continuously pass through, which far exceeds the requirement for flood flows through any objects in the floodplain. So to back up a different way, the question is, we're not raising the elevation or grade to impact the floodplain. And we're the proposal, as I understand it, is basically to present a tennis court with a chain link fence or something equivalent to that, through which water can flow that far exceeds FEMA standards to accommodate possible floodwaters.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Does that satisfy you, Matt? Any other questions?
Just a very brief question, very brief. Has the Cantor family considered, in the event of a flood, handing out little tennis rackets to all the fish?
We'll ask for that. We'll ask for a certification that they do. Okay. Dennis? This is supposed to be the board member. Wait, just hold on 1 minute. This is the board member's opportunity to ask questions. Then you get your opportunity. Okay, fair enough. Okay, is there another presentation, or have we heard everything that you want us to hear? And remember that everything that you submitted in the documents is in evidence. So can we move on now to questions from abutters or other interested parties? Thank you. Now, Dennis, it's your turn.
This is Dennis and Sue Kaufman at 535 Campbell Flat Road. We are abutters. And I want to give you a little history of the area. We've lived here for over 50 years, known the people who built the house and spent many hours there discussing the world with them. Their name was Swift, Diz and Critty Swift. Now, in all that time, we have witnessed 2 greater than 100-year floods in the area. This property has never flooded. The latest one of these storms was Irene. Before that, in 1973, there was a flood in and around Union Village that raised the level of the Union Village Dam to within 3 feet of the spillway, the highest it has ever been before or since. The dam was built in 1954. The only time that I am aware that the basement of the Swift house ever got wet was a couple days after the town raised the level of the road by 6 inches. That's my presentation. We don't need to worry too much about a flood here.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Hearing no other questions.
There was, Arlene, there was.
I just wanted to make a
Jonathan.
comment that I appreciate the Kaufman's perspective, and I very much look forward to meeting them and sharing stories together. Thank you.
Terrific.
Yeah, it's restoring my faith in citizenship. Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you.
I would then ask for a motion to adjourn the hearing. The way this process works, as you remember from last time, probably, we adjourn the meeting and then we have another business matter to talk about. Then we go into deliberative session. Deliberative session is a closed session open only to board members. And we have an informal discussion. And from that, since there were no questions, after that, you'll get a copy of our decision. Okay, so thank you all very much. Have a wonderful holiday. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, everything else, and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank
Be
you.
well.
I would accept a motion to close the hearing.
I so move.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Everybody said aye, Rod. Okay, thank you all very much. They will. Okay, so you all can depart.
Okay,
We-
can you,
One other business.
okay, before, so, and when we go into deliberative session, Eileen, if I could just let people know that there'll be this weird brief interruption while I put us all in a waiting room and stop the recording. And so then when we come out,
Right,
we'll
but
yep.
we have another business matter that Rod wants to present to us.
Right. Yep. So this is just to let you know that the Planning Commission, after the November meeting was cancelled due to not sure what we cancelled it for, but it got cancelled. Anyway, there's too many factors to think about. So we met earlier this week, and we've begun the process of reviewing draft land use regulation language. And the section that was presented for the Planning Commission was the administration section. So that's the rules and procedures that we would use for handling any kind of application, and in particular distinguishing between what the zoning administrator would be able to approve administratively and what the development review board would hear in the form of a hearing or application. And so with the Planning Commission's acknowledgement and approval, I would like to ask you to review the same language, and then maybe we can meet sometime in January. And I would like to gather your input on the draft administration section that I prepared for the Planning Commission, which I believe actually addresses lots of your concerns that you expressed when you were at the Planning Commission.
Okay, so you will send them to us in advance, and then we will have a meeting to discuss them. And
yes,
propose a date for the meeting more than 3 days in advance.
yeah, yes, I'd try and do that. And I should be. Let me try and say this correctly so that you can understand my sentence. It's late. We have not received any applications to be heard in January. So I would propose that we would meet the same, the third Thursday of January, which I believe is the 20th of January.
Sure.
Does that work for people?
Sure.
Okay. And remember, we will Zoom, so it doesn't matter where on the planet you are escaping to. we will be able to find you, and you will be able to find us.
It's a horrible development. You can't hide anywhere.
It was directed at you, Sue.
I figured. Okay.
All right. So there you go. So if you're up for that, I'll send it out as part of my Christmas package, and then you get to read it. All right. Okay.
Okay, so I guess we closed the hearing. Now we have to close the meeting.
Well,
Do
do you want to go into deliberative session?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let me try and remember how to do this.
All right.
So that
I'm going to the bathroom.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'm going.
Oh my God, where is it?
What if we left and all just came back in with the same link? Would that work? Is that easier for you?
I think I've just figured it out. No, we're all good. So I'm gonna create a so-called breakout room, which is not about our behavior. So I'm just creating it now. And then,
And then we'll all be in the breakout room.
yeah,
Join breakout room, join.
yeah. So,
Well, you gotta choose your own adventure here. I love it.
yeah, right.
Join.